Hello everyone. My aim in creating this course was to provide critically important information that is optimized for beginners without the unnecessary information overload that comes when you are trying to learn a program like Revit. Revit is so complex that even though I try to give only absolutely necessary information, the whole course is almost 13 hours long. So I have divided it into more parts for easier orientation. At the end of the whole course, you will be able to create documentation like the one you see in the background. In this first part of the course, I will talk about the Revit program itself and elements hierarchy in Revit, the user interface, and the basics of walls, which is a fundamental tool for working in Revit. So without any hesitation, let's just start right away. First, let's talk a little bit about the Revit as a program. So Revit as a program is working on a single project file that has all the information that it is needed for the construction documentation. It contains the geometry as well as the information about that geometry. One of the fundamentals of Revit is that it is automatically updating to make changes to the project as easy as possible. The name Revit even comes from that fact because it is a shortcut of revise instantly. So as you can see here in this really simple project demonstration, I have a building, and if I select my wall, and let's say that I will move it. Now you can see that I've moved it in my floor plan and it is automatically being updated in my section as well as in my 3D view. Also, elements that are connected to this wall, in this example roof, are automatically being updated when I moved the wall. You can imagine this as this building is a database and it is existing inside of the Revit as a program, and the views here are only like taking the information from this database and generating me the views based on what it is stored here. So this way you can see that if I move this section view, take a look at here, it will be automatically updating based on the movement of the section. So you can see that now it updates with the section through the roof, and also I'm not seeing my windows now. If I move the section view outside of the building, you can see that it updates again accordingly. So this is the most important feature of the Revit, that all the changes are automatically being updated between all of the views inside of your Revit project, so it is easier to manage and change things. Next, let's talk a little bit about the terminology in Revit, because inside of the Revit project consists of elements. So let's now talk a little bit about those elements. So everything that is in the project is a Revit element. Then these elements are being divided into model elements, which you can imagine as 3D representation of the geometry in the project. For example, walls, doors, and windows. Then there are datum elements, which help define project context. For example, grids and levels. And then there are view-specific elements, for example, dimensions, text, and text nodes. Model elements and datum elements are so-called 3D elements, and they are visible in all views. What that means is that, for example, here, if I select my wall, you can see that I can see it in a floor plan, in section view, as well as in the 3D view. So if I create a new wall, for example here, you can see that while I created it, it automatically is being shown in section view as well as in 3D views. Then there are view-specific elements, which are only visible in view where you create them. What that means is that, for example, here in my floor plan, I have this text node, and you can see that I can see it only in the floor plan and not in other views. And if I create a new text node, for example, here in this section view, let's go with the node 2, you can see that I can see it only in the section and not in any other view. Then the Revit elements in Revit are organized into so-called categories. The category is a group of elements with similar properties and functionality. In this example, you can see that I have a category of a furniture, which you can as well see in the properties palette that tells you that this is a furniture category. Then these categories are further defined into families, which define groups with more specific properties. In this example, I have a family of a work desk. So you can see that I have a category of a furniture and family of a work desk. Another example of a family would be a chair. Then there are family types, which has specific set of values for specific set of parameters. In this example, I have a work desk of a type 600 to 1200 millimeters. And then I have another type of 600 to 1600 millimeters. And then at last you have family instances or element instances, which is the object that is being placed inside of the project. In this example, the 3D representation of my work desk 600 to 1600 millimeters. If it is still confusing for you, don't be afraid, because when we will be progressing in the course, you will get to know these better. Okay, now when you open your Revit program, you will see something like this, which is called Start Screen. And here you can see your recent files for the Revit projects and your recent files for the Revit families. You can open existing projects from here or create a new one. The same thing you can do for the families. We will go and we will create, in this example, a new project which will be based on the default metric English template. You should have this template already installed in your project when you install the Revit 2024 program on your computer. So hit OK. And this is the user interface you will see when you open the Revit project for the first time. Now we will talk a little bit about the user interface. So the most important thing is this ribbon here, which contains all of the commands you need for working inside of the Revit program. This ribbon consists of different tabs, which let you find commands which have similar functionality more easily. You can see I have an architecture tab, structure tab, steel tab, precast, annotation tab, and so on and so forth. Another important thing is drawing area, which is the area here where you are drawing your model and creating it. Then there is a properties palette and a project browser. Here, when you open the Revit for the first time, you will see it like this, but you can actually go and change or modify the user interface for your will, and I will show you how to do this. Let's say that I want to change the position of the project browser somewhere else, so I will left click with my mouse button and hold it, and I will just move it away from the panel. And this way I can either leave it like this, like a floating panel, and move it onto my next screen, or I can just move it somewhere else inside of the Revit project. So me personally, when I'm working with Revit, I usually put a properties palette or panel on one side and the project browser on another side. So I will go onto the side of the screen until you see the preview of the position of the project browser. And if I now let off of my mouse, you can see that it got docked in here. Next part of the user interface is a quick access toolbar. Here on this toolbar, which is this one, you can see some useful commands. The most useful ones are open a project, save a project, and maybe later printing. And this one, which is really important, I use it almost all the time, which is default 3D view. Next, there is a status bar, which is thing in here. Then there is a view control bar, which is located here. The most important settings from here are this one, which is for the view scale, this one, which is for the detail level, and probably this one, which is for the visual representation. Then there is a really tricky one, which is called options bar, which now cannot be seen, but if I go with my wall tool, you can see now here. This thing is called options bar, and you can see many important settings in here. And I remember that when I was starting with my Revit projects, this was really a tricky one because you can easily oversee it. So you should pay attention when you are working with elements inside of the Revit, because on this option bar you will usually get a lot of useful settings. Then there is this so-called project browser, which helps you browse inside of your project or navigate in your project. Then there is a properties palette, where here you can see a type selector, and this part is for the properties. Now let's talk a little bit about navigating inside of your project. If I want to zoom in and zoom out, I will just scroll my mouse button. To pan, I will hold my scroll button and move with my mouse. This way I am panning. If I go to my 3D view, which I can do with the default 3D view command here, and I want to rotate the view, I need to hold down the scroll button, press Shift key, and by holding them both, if I move my mouse, I can rotate inside of the Revit project. So this is the basic navigation inside of your Revit projects. In your 3D views, you can also use your view cube, which can be found here, where you can just use it to take you to the predefined positions, which can be useful sometimes. Next, to navigate inside of your project between different views and so on, you can use your project browser. So if you take a look here, you can see that I have different floor plans, different ceiling plans, some 3D views, which is the 3D view I have just now created, and some elevations. So if I want to go to my level 1, I can just double click it and I'm here. I can open the level 2, the side view, also ceiling plans, and when you are working in your project, many times you will have many tabs like this opened. So it can happen that you will have more tabs open than can actually fit in here. So if you need to move between those tabs now, but you cannot see them, you can go in here. I will zoom this thing here. If you click it, you can choose from all of the views that are opened in this project. So I can go to my level 1 even though I cannot see it in the tabs here. The next really important and handy feature, which I'm using almost all the time, is here, close inactive views. This one. And as you will see, if I hit it, it will close all of the open views except the one which I have now active. You can see your active view also in the project browser because it will be in bold. You can see that these others are not in bold, so they are not active. So this way you can navigate inside of your project between different views. Now let's take a look on how you can drag a window outside of user interface to undock it and place it somewhere else, for example on the next screen. Me personally, when I'm working with Revit, I'm always using at least 2 screens because otherwise it is not that efficient to work in this program. So you can just go here on this tab, and if I press and hold my left mouse button and just move with the mouse cursor away, you can see that now I was able to undock this view. And if I just move it, I can go and move it to my next screen and leave it there and work like that. This way you can easily do changes to your user interface and to make it a little bit more user-friendly for you. Okay, then sometimes what can happen is that you will by accident close the properties palette or the project browser palette. and you would like to have it open again. So the way how you can do this is to go under the View tab here, click it, and here on the right side you can see the user interface. If you click it, here you can check the project browser. This way I am able to see the project browser again, and also the properties palette. Now let's start with the first tool, which is a wall tool, which is one of the most important tools in Revit. So we will take a look on it. First, you will find it under the architecture tab. Here, if I click on it with the left mouse button, you can see that I got something like this. And what we are going to talk about now is thing here, which are drawing tools for the wall. So first of all, we have a line, then there is a rectangle, inscribed polygon, circumscribed polygon, circle, start and radius arc, center end arc, tangent end arc, fillet arc, ellipse, partial ellipse, big lines, and big faces. So first of all, if we start with the line tool, if I zoom a little bit here with my scroll mouse button, and I start to draw my wall with left click, you can see that as I will zoom a little bit more, that as I am moving my mouse in the direction of the creation of the wall, there is this blue dimension here, which is called temporary dimension, which is showing me the value for the length of the wall. And you can see that as I'm moving with my cursor, there are increments of 100s, and they are giving me the snaps automatically. If I zoom more, these increments get smaller. You can see that now it is in increments of 20. If I zoom even more, like this, you can see that now these increments are smaller in 5. If you zoom away, these increments get bigger and bigger. So this is the first aid to help you with the drawing of the walls, and not only walls, but basically everything inside of the Revit. And if I hit my left mouse button again, I will finish creation of this wall now. So you can see that my wall is 2400 millimeters. As you can see that if I move my cursor away, there is automatically being another wall drawn from the last place which I clicked. So from here, this is the last point of my click of the mouse button, which is the end of this wall. It is automatically being taken as a start of the next wall. This setting is actually the setting from here. This is the options bar, which we were talking about before, which you should take care of, because usually you will be missing it and overseeing it. But here are actually pretty nice settings. And this one setting, which tells me that automatically the end of one wall is the start of the next wall, is the setting here, this chain command. So if I have this chain selected and I continue clicking with my mouse button, so another click, there is a wall and it starts again drawing another wall, and I continue like this, you can see that it is creating me a chain of walls. If I want to finish this creation, I have to hit escape button, and this way I have finished my chain of walls, but I am still inside of the wall tool. And if I want to go outside of the wall tool, I have to hit escape button again. This way I am back inside of my Revit user interface. So let's go back to the wall tool again, click it, and let's try it without the chain selected. So I will unselect this chain option, and now if I'm doing the same thing, I'm starting with first click, which is the start of the wall, second click, which is end of the wall, but now you can see that I do not have the automatic creation of another wall because I do not have this chain selected here. So in this instance, I have to actually click again for the start of the next wall and click to finish the wall. So this is the difference between the chain selected and the chain unselected. I will go back with the chain selected method. Okay, now let's talk about how to put exact numbers inside of these walls if I'm creating them. So let's say that I will first start with my left mouse button, and now I want to create a wall that will be, let's say, 4000 millimeters in length. So I can either go like this and try to place it on 4000 exactly, or the easier way is that I will just start to type the numbers on my keyboard. So now I am starting to type 4000 millimeters, and you hit enter to put this value inside. So hit enter and you can see that now I got my wall that has 4000 millimeters in length. And because I have my chain selected, I can continue with other walls. So I can just go and let's say create another wall here, which will be 2000 millimeters. And then another one, which will be, let's say, 2500 millimeters. So this way you can get more precision in the working inside of the Revit. Okay, now let's take a look on the other options for the drawing of walls. Let's go with the rectangle. And this one was a little bit tricky for me when I was starting, because you go with the first click and the second click is the next corner, and this is the end of your rectangle. And in different programs you can just write here the values. Now that, let's say, I want to create a rectangle of 4000 to 4000. So if I start to write now on my keyboard, nothing is happening. So I cannot do it the same way I could do with the only line option, but I have to do it differently. And how to do it differently is that you have to first create your rectangle. So I have my rectangle created. Now I have to hit escape to escape from the wall tool. And now I need to change it afterwards, after the creation, to have the values as I want. So if I select my wall by clicking on it with the mouse button, you can see here now this temporary dimension again, and you can see the value of 2700 millimeters. If I click inside of it, and let's go with 4000 again on the keyboard, hit enter, and now this way it has 4000 millimeters. I can do the same in different direction, 4000 millimeters, and this way I have a 4000 millimeters to 4000 millimeters square. Okay, let's go back and take a look at other ones. We have inscribed or circumscribed polygon. Basically what it does is that it will start creating a polygon from the center. And here there is one important setting again on the options bar, which is this one, which is number of sides. You can see I have a value of 10 here, so this polygon has 10 sides because of this. If I go here and change this to, let's say, number 5, you can see that now I'm creating a polygon with 5 sides. The difference between the circumscribed and the inscribed polygon is here in the preview. You can see if I show it to you like this thing is a circle, and you can see that this polygon is inscribed inside of this circle, whereas in this other option, if I do the same, you can see that this polygon here is circumscribed, so it is touching my circle. Okay, so we can create a polygon like this. Then there is a circle, which is easy. You just go first click from the center, and then you have radius. Then there is a start and radius arc. You can use this to create things like, let's imagine that you have a walls. Let's create walls with lines. This is the first one. I will hit escape. Then the second one, hit escape again. Now I want to connect these two walls with some arc. I can go with the start and radius arc option, and I will start at the end of the first wall. Go now to the start of the second wall. And now I can create an arc between them. You can see that you get a previews of this, or you can just again go in and type the value. Let's say I want it to be 1000 millimeters in diameter. So I will type it inside and hit enter. And this way I was able to create an arc between those two walls of 1000 millimeters radius. If you want to later change this value or change this arc, you can do it afterwards. You do not have to like go and delete it and create it again. You can just click on the arc. You can see this temporary dimension, click inside of it again, and let's go with, let's say, 1500 millimeters, hit enter. And you can see that this way I was able to change the definition and the dimension of this arc without the needing to create it again. So I was modifying it after the creation. Okay, let's go back to our wall tool. Let's see the center and arc. This one is a little bit different than this one because this starts with the center. So you first define the center of the arc, then the radius, and then you just go from a point to point. So we will create like part of the arc. Then there is a tangent and arc, which works similarly as this one. So if I go now here again and create one line for the wall, hit escape, another one for the wall, and I will connect them together with the tangent and arc. And I start with the first one and go to the second one. You can see that I cannot actually tell it the radius because it's automatically calculating it in the way that it will be tangent to the start. So this way I can just connect these two walls and I will create a tangent and arc. The next one is a fillet arc, which is also for the similar situations. So if I create again a wall and a wall, and I go with my fillet arc, and this one works in the way that you will first select first wall, then the second wall, and then it will start creating a fillet between them, and you can just create a fillet like this. Then there is also the thing that if I go back here to undo this change, and let's take a look again at the options bar here on the radius and this setting with this fillet arc selected, I can go and check this value, and let's say it will be 1000 millimeters. What this means is that if now I create my fillet arc between those two walls, it will be automatically of the radius of 1000. So I can just go hit first wall, second wall, and you see it created the arc of 1000. Now I could do this with more walls, that I would just be selecting the ends and it will be always creating arcs of 1000 millimeters between them. Okay, next we can go with ellipse. You start with the center of the ellipse, then you go with the horizontal direction, and then with the vertical one, and you have an ellipse. Partial ellipse is the same, but you will be just creating the part of the ellipse. And then we are going to one of the most important things from the drawing methods, which is here, this one, which is a pick lines tool. You can zoom a little bit here. So this thing here is really important because it lets you pick lines or different edges in your project to be used to create your walls. So we can show it in an example here. Let's go to our annotate tab, to our detail line tool, which is a tool for creating just like 2D lines. And let's just now draw some here with the line tool, with the chain selected. Let's draw something like this. Let's say that this would be the base for your walls. So this is the definition lines of your walls, and you want to create walls exactly on those lines. So you could either go, and I will go back to my wall tool, and you could either go and just start drawing like this, first end, and then click again, click again, and do it like this. Or I will go back. Or you can go and use the pick lines tool. And if I go with my pick lines tool here, and I hover around this line, you can see that it is now blue. I will zoom a little bit for you to be able to see it. Now it is blue because it is highlighted. And this way, if I click now with my left mouse button, it will automatically create a wall based on this line. So I can do the same for the next line, next line, next line, next line, and so on and so forth. This is pretty cool because it saves you a lot of time. Okay, I will go and hit an escape again. And the last one is pick faces. Me personally, I have never used this, so I think that probably you will not need to know about this much. But basically this lets you pick faces from the masses inside of your Revit project. Okay, so now let's talk about the properties palette, which can be found here. And first we will talk about the type selector, which is this thing, and the edit type dialog, which is here. So first of all, we will take a look a little bit back on the difference between types and instances. So we have seen something like this in our first lecture, that we have family types. In this example, it was a work desk and a work desk of different dimensions. And then we have family instances or element instances placed in the project. And here we had a picture which is from the properties palette. So if we go back to our Revit project, you can see this is the properties palette. And let's go with the escape button outside of our wall tool, and let's go back in the beginning and select the tool by clicking on it. So first of all, here you can see the category, so it is category of walls. Then you can see here basic wall, which is a family. Then the next thing you can see is generic 200 millimeters. This is the family type. And then this selected thing here is the family or element instance. Okay, and now here this thing is called type selector, which lets you choose between different types of walls. So if I go here to the drop down, you can see these are all of the types of the walls I have now in my project. This is the generic 200 millimeters wall type. And here you can see, for example, generic 300 millimeters wall types and different types. Then there is a setting here, the edit type dialog. If I click on this, I will enter the type properties palette, which here as well you can see I have family, system family, basic wall. The type of the family is generic 200 millimeters. And then I have some type parameters here, which by scrolling you can see there is a lot of parameters. But the one we will be focusing on now is this one, the width parameter. So you can see that because this parameter width is type parameter, it will be same for all of the elements of this type inside of the Revit project. So let's just now, for the demonstration purposes, create different walls of different types. So I will go to my wall tool, change the wall type to be generic 300 millimeters, and I will create some walls of this type here in the view. Hit escape to go outside of the wall tool. Now I will change this graphically so you will be better able to see that. You do not have to follow with me on this one, but if you want, you can. This is the setting that for now I will not explain because I do not think you need to know it in such a beginnings. But I will just change this graphically for you to be better able to see that. So you can see I have my walls, which are red, which are of the type generic 300 millimeters. Then I have my walls which are green, which are of the type generic 200 millimeters. And the difference between types and family instances is that this is the family or element instance. So this is a single wall. Then there is another wall and there is another wall. If I select them all by hitting the control button and clicking on them, you can see I have 3 walls selected, which are of the type generic 300 millimeters. Let's just now see what these type definitions do. So if I go to my edit type dialog and I change here my width to be different. So I will go to the structure, hit edit. Now I'm in the edit assembly dialog. And the only thing that now interests us is here, this thickness. I will click here and let's change this to be 600 for us to be better able to see that. Hit OK. And now let's see what happens here. If I hit apply, the width of those 3 red walls will change to be 600 millimeters because they are of the same type. And this change will affect all of the walls of this type, but it will not affect the walls of the other type. So if I hit apply, you can see that in one go I was able to change all of the walls of the same type in my whole project at once. But it is not affecting other types of walls. So this is the most important thing because type properties and type parameters affect all of the elements of the same type inside of your Revit project. Then there are instance parameters, which if I select this wall, and go here in the properties palette can be found here. So those are instance parameters. The most important ones for us now are the location line, the base constraint and base offset, and the top constraint and the top offset or the unconnected height. If we now go to the 3D view by clicking here on this default 3D view icon, and I will rotate my view with rotation command by holding the scroll mouse button and shift key. So we will better be able to see the walls we are working with. Okay. So I will do this side by side like this for you to be better able to see that. So I have a wall here. I have a wall here and I have a wall here. All of these walls are of the same type. So all of the parameters which are here in the type definition will be same for these three walls. But the parameters which are here will be different for every wall if we make it only for one wall. The good example is the height. So let's go with this wall, which has unconnected height of 8000 millimeters. Now I will change this to be, let's say, 6000 millimeters. And you can see that it changed in 3D, but it affected only the selected wall and not other walls of the same type. Only this one, because it is an instance parameter, so it affects only the selected instance. If I go here to this wall, to this instance of the wall, and I change this parameter to be 4000 millimeters, and now to be able to see this change, I need to either hit apply here, or I need to hover away from the properties palette with my cursor. So if I hover away, you can see that the change got applied automatically. So I have changed the height of the wall, but only on the selected wall. So you can see I have three walls of the same type, so they have the same thickness of 600 millimeters, which I have set in the edit type dialog here. But the height of the wall is different for every wall because it is an instance parameter which is defined here in the properties palette. So this wall has 8000 millimeters, this wall has 6000 millimeters, and this one has 4000 millimeters. Now to recap the most important from this element type versus instance. So here on the screen you can see I have instances. All of these walls are instances. So this wall is an instance, this one is a separate instance, this is another instance, this as well, this as well, this as well. So instance is, in another word, a single element in Revit. Then these three walls are three instances of the same type, which is of generic 200 millimeters type. And these three red walls are the instances of the same type of the generic 300 millimeters type in our example. And if I change something to the type of generic 200 millimeters, all of those walls will be updated. If I change something to the type generic 300 millimeters, all of these red walls will be affected. If I change something to only this one instance, which is green, it will affect only this instance and not any other walls. If I change something to the red wall instance, it will affect only this wall and not the other walls. So this is the biggest difference between instance and type parameters or changes in Revit. I will now close the 3D view and we will be in the level 1 floor plan. Now let's talk about the constraints of the walls. Here those settings, what are they doing and why are they important. So first of all, we will start with the location line setting. Let's just show this example here. So I will create a wall of the generic 200 millimeters type, like this. And I will draw here some lines for us to be better able to explain that. So let's go with one here in the middle, at one end and at the other end. Okay, so I have a wall like this, and if I click on it, you can see here these blue dots, one blue dot, the other blue dot. It is now in the middle of the wall, in the center, and these blue dots tells you the location of the location line, or the position of the location line. Here in the location line settings, you can see that it is now a wall center line. You have different options here, but the most used ones are wall center line, finish face exterior, and finish face interior. So in this example, if I will change the scale of the view to be 1:50 for you to be better able to see that, and I will go with the text tool and write here. So this is our exterior side of this wall in this example, and this is the interior side of the wall in this example. You can also in the Revit see it by these two arrows here. These two arrows will always tell you the exterior side of the wall in Revit. So if I now move my location line by changing this value to be finish face exterior, you can see that these two blue dots moved to the exterior side. So now this location line of the wall is defined here on this exterior side. If I change this to be interior, you can see that now it is on the interior side of the wall here. Let's change it back to be the wall center line. And let's talk about why is this important and where you can use it. So first of all, we will start with the changing of the wall to a different type, and we will show this on the example of a type which is of the different thickness. So you can see here, if I will just annotate this, you will not need to follow me because I will be using shortcuts, but this is just for you to be better able to see that. This is 200 millimeters in total, and at both sides it is 100 millimeters from the center of the wall. If I now change this to be a different type of wall, you can see that it changed from the wall center line to both sides, to exterior side as well as interior side, the thickness of the wall to be a total of 600 millimeters, because that is what we have here in this parameter. So you can see that this wall is now from the center line of the wall 300 millimeters and 300 millimeters, so 600 millimeters in total. If I now go and undo this change and go back, and let's change the location line to be not wall center line, but let's say finish face interior. So you can see that now the position of the location line is here on this side, interior side. And I do the same thing, that I change the wall type from generic 200 millimeters to a different type. Now you can see that the thickness of this wall was not changed in both directions, to the exterior side and to the interior side, but it was only changed to the exterior side, and that is because the location line now is on the interior side. If I undo this change again and change this to be finish face exterior side, and now I change the type, you can see, or you could see that the change will go in this direction to the interior side, because this position of the location line remains intact and remains on the same place. So if I do this now, you can see it went all the way, or all of the width went in one direction to the interior side. So this is why this location line is important, because if you are making changes in your project, this position of the line will stay, or this location line and the position of the wall will stay fixed. And now a practical example, why is this important? Let's go here and let's just now again draw with the annotate and detail line some rectangle here. And let's go and create a rectangle like this. So now let's say that this space here is the space of a room, and you know that you cannot go with your wall inside of this rectangle. You can have only your walls outside of this rectangle. So let's go back to our wall tool and let's just create our wall with the location line set to wall center line. Now if I start to create with my rectangle tool, and I go from one corner to the next corner, you can see that it is creating walls, but from the center line. So it is actually creating a wall in here, inside of the building, where I do not actually want it. So if I would be creating with the wall center line selected, I would need to go and manually move the wall after the creation. But you can change this behavior if you go and change this location line from wall center line to be finish face interior. You can do the same thing here on the options bar to change the location line to be finish face interior. And now if I'm creating the walls, I'm doing the same thing, but you can see that now the wall is taking the location as I want it, and it is not going inside of my room as in the previous example. So if I continue and finish it, it will be created as I want. And now if I change these walls to a different type, let's go here. You can see that it went to the exterior of my space, and the interior side is intact. So I can know that when I will be modifying and changing the building in the process of creation, I will have this fixed in the way I want it. Now let's talk about the constraints for walls. So let's just now go here in this example and we will create a section view. Let's go to the view, the section, and just go with the first click and the second click. The section is created. Now let's click with the right mouse button on the section line and go with go to view option. So we are now in the section view, and you can see that my wall is going from the level 1. We will talk more in detail about levels and what are they a little bit later in the course. But now let's just say that these are some things which help you define relationships between different elements in project. If I select my wall, you can see that it has height of 8000 millimeters from the level 1. So the base constraint is level 1, and because it has a relationship, or it is connected to the level 1, if I now move with my level 1 with the move command here, and I will just move it, you can see that it automatically moved the base of the wall with the level, because this level or this wall knows that it is connected to the level 1, and it always retains this relationship of the connection because of these parameters and the constraints between them. So if I move this again with the move command, or I can just go and hold the left mouse button and move it, you can see that all these walls are moving with the level. So now if I select the wall and put here some value base offset, let's put here 400 millimeters, go away. Now you can see that it created some offset from the level, which if I will dimension it, you can see that it is 400. And the importance of this is that this base offset will always remain the same regardless of how I move my level. So if I now move my level, you can see that the offset remains constant, and this is because it recalculates the relationship between the level, the wall, and it retains this connection between them. So this is the base constraint and the base offset. Then there is a top constraint and top offset, which is now grayed out, and the unconnected height. If the top constraint is selected as unconnected, it doesn't have any relation to any other elements, which can be in this example levels. So it doesn't have a relationship to this level. So whatever I do with this level, you can see that it is not affecting the top of my wall because it is unconnected. But if I now select this and connect it to the level, so I will tell it to be up to the level 2 and hover away, you can see that it automatically now connected to the level, and because it is now connected, it retains the relationship and recalculates. If I move this level, you can see that the wall is automatically being recalculated with the different position of the level. The same thing as with the base offset goes with the top offset. If I put here a number 400, you can see that now it has 400 above the level. Or you can go even the negative values. If I put here minus 400, you can see that it is now offset to downward 400 like this. And again, it retains the same position. So if I go with my level and move it, you can see that it is retaining these relationships. So those are the most important settings from the properties palette for walls and wall instances, which you will need to use a lot. And as I said before, because the settings which are here are for the instance, you can see that it is only affecting this one wall and it is not affecting this wall here. So if I need to do changes to this wall, I need to select it and do the same thing again. You can see the base constraint, base offset, top constraint and top offset are different. Good thing about this is that you do not have to do this one by one always all the time, but you can do it all at the same time. I will show you this again side by side with the default 3D view. I will place it here. And let's just now check on these walls. These are my walls here. And if I select them all, and let's go with the ones which are different, I can go and select my base constraint, my base offset, top constraint and top offset. So let's go with the top constraint, level 2, and leave it like this. And if I go away, you can see that I was changing all selected walls at the same time. So you do not need to do it one by one. Okay, now I will close this and let's talk about the options bar for walls. So as I said, in the user interface section, this thing here is called options bar. Now it is empty. But if I go and select my walls tool, you can see that now I can see here some settings for the walls. Now we will talk about those settings and what they do and how or why are they important. And usually me in the beginning, I was always overlooking this option bar because it is a little bit tricky to see. So you should pay attention when working to what you have set in here because it can sometimes do you mess in your project. So let's now first go with the height or depth. What this means is that if I have now here the unconnected height of 8000 millimeters and I have height selected and I create a wall, it will create a wall to the height or to the top. I will go back to my 3D view and place it again on the side. And I will just go with the front view by clicking on the view cube. And let's create it outside of all of the walls which we have, so somewhere here in the space. So I will go back here and let's create a wall with the height of 8000. So I create it and you can see it created a wall from the level to the top. Now if I change this to be the depth and I do the same thing, you can see I cannot even see it in my floor plan, and in 3D view you can see that it has created a wall but in a different direction. It was not creating it from the level to up but from the level to down. So basically why they do this is that structural engineers usually draw walls like this, but we as building engineers or architects, we are using walls or drawing walls like this. So I think that you should always have this selected to be the height. Okay, the next setting is the unconnected height, which is now 8000, or you can just connect it to the levels, which is the thing we were talking about in the constraints. So this is the same. Then there is this location line, which we were talking about before for the location line, which is wall center line, finish face interior or exterior. Then there is a chain setting, which is doing that it will automatically start creating another wall or not. We were also talking about this. Now let's go with the offset. This one is also quite nice and quite important because it can let you do the offset of the wall already in the process of creation. So let's say that I want to create an offset of 500 from these two walls, another wall. So I can just write it here in the parameter value and start creating my wall. And you can see that it is automatically being created offset by 500 millimeters from my wall or from where I draw it. Okay, the next thing, I will leave this back to be 0 and hit enter. The next thing is the radius. What this do is that it will automatically create these fillet arcs already in the process of creation. So if I will go here and just start creating my walls and finish first wall, and then I will go with the second one and finish it, you can see that it automatically has created a fillet of 1000 millimeters radius here at the connection of these two walls. If I will continue, you can see that it automatically creates those fillet arcs. Sometimes you can get an error if it is too steep or it doesn't know how to calculate it. So you can see that it was creating the fillets between the walls automatically in the process of creation. We'll go back to the wall tool, and the last thing is this one, join status, and it is really important one because like 99% of the time we will want to have this setting allowed here, but you can also disallow join. And I will show you what this does now. I will close this 3D view. And let's continue with the join status allowed with the chain selected. And I will create a chain of walls by clicking like this. So you can see that those walls are nicely cleaned in the corners. So we can see here, here, and here. It is cleaned and there is nothing missing. Now if I do the same thing with the join status here to be disallowed, when I draw this, I go with the first wall, second wall, third, and the fourth. And now you can see the difference that here the join, this join is not cleaned and this join it is cleaned. Here I am actually missing some geometry and here it is nice and cleaned, and here as well. And this is the difference between the joints and when you have joints not allowed. The join is some Revit way of saying that it will automatically clean the geometry for you. So you should always have this, or almost always have this selected to be allowed, because then when you are creating your walls, it will automatically clean the corners for you.